And so are we good?
Yep.
Okay, great. Um, Here's one. It says the National Race for Results Index. It came out with a black child ranks last on the milestone index. I don't know if you had a chance to look at that.
Not that particular study, but
Let me read a little bit of what this was saying then. It says, despite great progress that grew out of the civil rights movement, a web of stubborn obstacles remain that prevent children of color, especially black children, from reaching their full potential, according to a recent report by the Annie E. Casey Foundation. It says differences in opportunity are evident from the earliest years of a child's life. And you know, these obstacles that our children are facing in education, and now they've come out with some reports that's saying that, you know, because of certain environmental factors, they even stunt our children's brain development. Do you have any, opinions on that?
yes. Yes, I think that if you really think about the development of a human being the way you think about building a car or building a house, if you start off building that house on a very bad foundation and you use very bad materials, then the final and then you don't, construct it with some degree of deliberation about what you want the final product to look like, then you're going to get a house that looks like a mess. And I think that with our children, there are factors that many of which are not created by us. We did not invent racism or choose to enslave ourselves or put ourselves through Jim Crow. We did not create the conditions that have led to the disparities that exist in America. But there is some degree of free will we have as a community to decide what we want our children to be. And when you really look at the construction of that child, the way you construct a house, you start from the very beginning and you think about the foundation under which that child is born. When you start off with this single parent fad that we've had, where daddies are almost optional accessories in the life of a child, you're already building your building on a shaky foundation. You already have a gap, a deficit that's going to need to be made up for. And then when that child is born, when you're not raising that child deliberately, and they grow up in an environment where they know they can memorize rap lyrics by the age of 4, but don't know their ABCs, can't read, can't write, can't do any of that, then you're starting your child down a trajectory that's going to lead to their failure. And you can go even deeper and talk about some of the abuse that occurs in many households. A lot of children are sexually abused by their mother's boyfriends because their mother never married the father, never kept the father around to protect the child, so the child is vulnerable. And then you go even deeper. The child then becomes vulnerable to the school system and what they do to the school. We know about that. I don't have to repeat any of that. We know what happens in the criminal justice system. And we know what happens in mass media with the kind of music that's being filtered into our children's brains. So really, you have to build your child with an umbrella made of steel. And that means the umbrella must protect them from all these factors that are designed for your child's destruction. And that has to be a deliberate process. It is not going to happen by accident or just by you just raising your child any old way you feel like it. You have to be deliberate.
Right. I think that it's children raising children. I mean, so we're dealing with a problem that is deep rooted. What are some of your, suggestions that, well, just for a young mother right now, would you suggest that she go, to the library, of course, get books, or what steps?
My advice to young mothers is to love your children, because you probably think you love your children, but if you look at what your children are becoming and what's going to happen in their lives, some of us that think that we love our children don't really love them. Love is not a matter of short-term gratification. Love is a matter of making investments and sacrifices that will secure your child's ability to grow into a healthy and happy, successful adult. So that means You don't show your love by giving your child whatever they want. You might show love by forcing them to have some discipline.
Right.
You don't show your love by letting your child come home and watch BET 7 hours a day. You show your love by forcing your child to get into a study program so they can be academically successful.
Be a parent and not so much a friend.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Because I think, I definitely understand what you're saying is that, sometimes we think as parents, maybe discipline, we're being too hard on them. And maybe as a single parent, we're thinking that love will dissipate because of the discipline, but that's not actually true. They may be upset, but in the long run, they will come to appreciate that code, that discipline, those rules and regulations.
Yeah,
Definitely.
structure and discipline are very important. I think that if a single mother's raising a child, male or female, you're silly not to think that child doesn't need a male mentor or something. And I'm talking about girls too. Girls with low self-esteem do lots of self-destructive things when they get older. Boys with low self-esteem cannot survive in the world of men. And so ultimately, we're already messing up by allowing ourselves to be sucked into a mentality that says that we don't need a man. If you run around talking about I don't need a man, that's silly. That's as ridiculous as me saying I don't need a woman, knowing that without my grandmother, my mother, and my daughters, and all the women that loved me and saved me and raised me and took care of me, it would be silly for me to think I don't need that.
Right. And that's propaganda, pure and simple. Now, there was just a killing, or I should say not a killing, but a drive-by, this young white boy in a BMW having what they call now, they term it affluenza, which is what we've all known as white privilege. But he went out and killed. What are your thoughts on that? Because it seems as though whenever they do these type of killings, they always get labeled mentally ill. They always have a mental illness. But when it's a black on black crime, then there's no such labeling of the individual being mentally ill.
I think with the affluenza case, you're talking about in Texas, the drunk driving guy, or was it a different?
Him also, but also I think it was the director's son of.
The guy. I know you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah. With that, what I really see in terms of how crimes are interpreted differently based on race is that we live in a racist society. We live in a country where whites and blacks have very different ways of seeing the world, and whites have all the power. So therefore, whites are allowed the privilege of imposing their worldview on us. So, when you turn on the TV, you're going to hear a perspective coming from a white man or a white woman typically, because they're the ones who control that media. And so when we talk about what everybody's saying, or what the perception is of an event, we have to be thoughtful about whether we're getting that perception from television, or let's say I go to read the Final Call run by the Nation of Islam. I'm gonna get a different perspective, right? It's a different kind of media. So I think that we have to think about the media we absorb, the way we think about the food we eat. You don't have to eat the food, the psychological food that's around you. You can choose the food that you want.
Right.
So when I'm looking for news or looking for a perspective that is empowering to my community, I will read the Final Call or some other outlet that I know is going to be sympathetic to who we are. Now, with that being said, when you talk about these court systems and these things that are run primarily by whites, I think that mischaracterization of why black men do what we do, it exists really for reasons that really sort of describe just the art of war. Whites have been at war with us for a long time.
Right.
The only mistake we make is that we don't fight back. We think that they're our friends. And they literally, unfortunately, the white American community or the power structure is, they're almost like a group of people that say we come in peace, but yet, and you believe them, and then they take all your stuff and they kill you.
Right.
Because you're too silly. You're naive enough to believe what they're saying as opposed to what they're doing.
And I think you make an excellent point, because that was just brought out in the Donald Sterling whole scandal. Because I think if most people read the text of what he said, he's saying, for instance, that blacks in Israel were treated like dogs, And when she asked him, would he change, he said he's not trying to change the culture, you know, what you're saying. And basically, when you look at those whites who have a lot of power and influence, you know, like you say, they come out maybe in front of the camera and say one thing and act a certain way, but behind the camera, when the mic is off and where he thought it was off, you know, they're saying a totally different thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, that's because the racism has been pushed underground. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
And I encourage people to, you know, pay attention to what you see and look at the results. Don't listen to what you're hearing all the time, because that will deceive you.
Mm-hmm.
The results are clear. The results say that when it comes to mass incarceration, there is a disparity, a huge disparity that's destroying our families. When it comes to education, huge disparity. When it comes to urban violence, huge disparity. When it comes to economics, huge disparity.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the things that we have to look at, not whether or not this white man over here says that he wants to treat me equally.
Mm-hmm.
The evidence says that that is not true.
Now, do you think that that as a people that, you know, the reason why that we're not catching on to what you're saying, what are some of the factors that you think that the masses of the people are not catching on?
You know,
Of our people, because we still have that same mentality. We don't see reality as it is.
well, you know, I think it's one of those things where it is. It's like if you've got a pot of cold water and let's say it's 20 gallons of cold water, and you dump a gallon of hot water into the water. The water is still going to be very cold, but it's warmer than it was before you put that gallon of hot water into it. And so you have to, in order to change the temperature of the water significantly, you're going to have to keep on dumping hot water in there. And then you also got to accept the fact that somebody else might be on the other side of the bucket putting ice cubes in the water.
That's true.
Right? And so you've got forces that are at you know that are at odds with each other, and we have to be forceful in terms of pushing forward you know, our beliefs, maybe our agenda, if you want to call it that, that's going to help and uplift our community, because there are people that are seeking to keep us oppressed. You know, Malcolm said it very clearly when he said that you will never get your freedom and you will never get equality as a gift. You really have to take it.
Right.
People do not give power away easily. So when you talk about what the masses are absorbing, a lot of them are absorbing the BS that you hear on the radio. They're absorbing the stuff that you see on TV. And it makes my job a lot harder.
Right.
But there are a lot of folks out there that will hear some of the things I might say, or you know, a much greater man than me, someone like a Minister Louis Farrakhan. They'll hear him and say, "I'm so glad that somebody out here is saying that." That's what I want to gravitate toward, because that's my light, even in a dark tunnel.
Right.
So you know, we're not going to win the battle overnight. It'll probably be a losing fight for most of us. It'll seem for most of our lives. But you got to remember, if you go back to 1720, you had slaves that were out fighting against slavery,
Right.
and most of them, all of them died, without seeing the institution fall. Many of them died as slaves themselves. But the seeds that they planted were seeds that took 100 years to grow.
Yeah, that's
know,
right.
without the first runaway slave, you could not have the first black president. So we've got to have a commitment to the faith necessary to plant the seeds, in hope and expectation that future generations will pick up those seeds and grow them into something real.
Now, is that what you're doing when you founded the Your Black World Network and these websites? Because we see that mainstream media is really it's not dying, but it's close to losing the type of influence that it had over the masses. How important do you see the web in helping to shape the minds of the masses?
The web is huge. Without the web, a lot of the people that know anything about me never would have heard of me. Without the web, you wouldn't hear about guys like Dr. Umar Johnson, who has said a lot of things that are politically incorrect. The liberals and the feminists, they can't stand what he's saying, but he's speaking a type of truth that a lot of black people can appreciate. So the web is absolutely huge. Media in general is huge. Media is how people communicate with one another. So I saw the democratization of media, where we all had access to media. I saw that as a huge opportunity to start reaching people. And to tell you how powerful that is, usually when one country invades another one of the first things they do is they take over the radio stations and TV stations, and then sometimes they kill the pastors and the scholars and the thinkers because they don't want people spreading ideas that they might define to be dangerous. And so ultimately, by being a scholar with some access to media, I see that really almost like having, my set of machine guns, and I'm going to fire until the clip is empty.
Exactly. I had the experience of a brother who had graduated from one of these prestige military schools, and he said one simple fact to me. He said those with air superiority usually win the war, and I thought that was pretty profound, because he was talking on just different levels, military war, but also on that spiritual level as well. It was Africa. We see this assault and invasion through AFRICOM. Now Boko Haram using some would say using the girls for America's justification for humanitarian aid or invasion. What are your thoughts on Africa right now, because of, I guess, the competition between China, and they're using a different type of method to, I guess, embed themselves into Africa, and America using more of a military way, in there through AFRICOM and so-called security?
I think that Africa is going to be one of the places where the investment opportunities are huge. There are so many resources there. The Chinese are making the very wise decision to become heavily invested in Africa. I think that conscientious companies from anywhere should see the value of that investment opportunity. I don't really know what to make of the kidnapping of the girls in Nigeria, because, obviously it's a tragedy, and you want to help, but people lie to you so much you just don't know what to believe.
Exactly.
And then, someone made the point to me that, while everyone does speak legitimately about the 200 girls that were kidnapped in Nigeria, they said there are over 10, 15,000 black girls in America that have been kidnapped, that are missing. And no one says anything about that. And so it makes you wonder, is there an agenda there? I can't say for sure.
Right.
I can just say I don't trust the government. I think the government does lie to us. They find all kinds of ridiculous reasons to invade. At the same time, though, it'd be wrong for me to say that we shouldn't help if we could. As long as we help in a way that's conscientious. The problem is we don't have a history of doing that.
Right, absolutely. Economics, because there are some, I guess, bullet points from your website, education, economics, empowerment, and social justice. So talking on the economics, it's saying that by, I forget the future date, that blacks will have $1 trillion purchasing power. But it seems as though we're still not really understanding the dynamics of economics and allowing our money to flow out of our communities as soon as they come in. What are your thoughts on economic development and that whole aspect?
Okay, well, if people want to really follow that, we got a platform called financialjuneteenth.com that does a lot of that. And what I suggest on Financial Juneteenth is a simple acronym that goes to the word cost. I tell people from the beginning, you must be prepared to pay the cost for your freedom. If you're not ready to pay the cost for your freedom, then you do not deserve to be free. And cost is an acronym. The C stands for contribute. That means that if we want black institutions to thrive and exist, we must understand the critical importance of us contributing to those institutions. So I encourage people to contribute to some black institution other than your church, and tithe to those institutions the way you tithe to the pastor. O stands for ownership. You have to own something. Commit yourself to owning something on a small scale, starting with your own home maybe. Owning a car, owning jewelry, owning clothes, that does not count. Own something that is going to grow in value. You also maybe want to have your own business as well. In fact, I think it's critical. You really don't want to have all your money coming from one source. S stands for save and invest. The best way to have money is to keep your money. When you get money, you ain't supposed to give it away. When you hear somebody say something ignorant like, when I get my taxes, I can't wait to go to buy the new Jordans. let them know that there are other things they can do with that tax refund other than buy Jordans.
Right.
Investing means putting your money into things that will grow in value, putting yourself in situations where your money will work for you. You are not supposed to work and break your back until you're 100 years old in order to keep paying your bills. You're supposed to do that for a while, if necessary, so that you can put your assets into things that will eventually bring money to you, so that if you decide you still want to work, you work 5-10 hours a week instead of 50-60 hours a week. And you're not just barely getting by, you've got money saved. You've got assets that have accumulated value over time. T stands for target. That means that when you go spend your money, if you have the opportunity to spend that money with a black business, do that.
Right.
You are creating jobs when you do that. You know, when you go to Walmart, and think about where you target your money, understand that spending your money recklessly is like having a gun and just firing in every direction and
Right.
not firing at your actual target. I mean, you don't do that. You target that power. You know, you don't want to, money is power. You don't want to give all your power away.
And I think, you know, that's an interesting point, because I think that we have to begin to see money in that type of light, that it's power, that it's energy, and that wherever you focus that power, wherever you focus that energy is what's going to be energized. It's it's going to have life.
That's right.
But that's very interesting. I know a lecture from Dr. Claude Anderson. He was talking about one of the reasons why the black community is in the state that it's in is because we work, we're on jobs, but we don't have businesses. We're not business owners. And then he gave, I guess, the ratio of Asians who own business and whites who own business, and then compared it to blacks who own business. But I think that your point is right on point. You know.
Thank you.
Yes. A few more questions. A study that we all knew about, that video games encourage racist and aggressive attitude towards blacks. It also said, there was a report that also came out that said that that music itself causes aggression. I think this is something that we all knew about, though. I mean, as black people. What are your thoughts on that, and the radio stations that are supposed to be black, but we know that they're not owned by blacks, and they play this rotation of aggressive type of disrespectful music to women?
Well, I think that when it comes to video games and aggressive attitudes toward blacks, I'm really hesitant to be too overly sensitive about people not liking black people. It doesn't bother me if I walk down the street and there's a man who wants to call me the N-word or doesn't like me because I'm black. Because the fact is, we live in a world where people don't like each other for whatever reason. So I think that we need to really be very cautious about, teetering that line between truly seeking black empowerment versus trying to profit from black victimhood. Where we will go to whites and say, you said this to hurt my feelings, and it's not very nice, and you need to give me a more affirmative action, and no, ain't nobody gonna respect you if you are a whiny little wimp with no power. You got to, it's like football. When you go out on the field and somebody spits in your face and calls you a name, you need to knock that sucker on his back. Right. You don't cry to the coach. That's right. You got to fight. And I don't think that we're built yet entirely for fighting the way we should be. So I guess I'll start with saying that. But going deeper than that, when you talk about this music and speaking of the fight, the fight does have to be taken to these radio stations and these record labels, because they have committed to a very strategic effort to build what I would call weaponized psychological genocide. They have pretty much taken our most prominent figures in our community, the rappers and athletes too, but mostly rappers, and have financed them to spread a message that is nothing less than one that will lead to self-destruction. There is nothing good that will happen to a black man who is told on a day-to-day basis that he should go stay high and drunk as much as possible, go kill another black man, go spend all his money irresponsibly, go have sex with every girl that he sees, call women bitches and hoes, excuse my French, and then take pride in wanting to go to prison. Those are, I mean, what in the world, like what kind of lunatic thinks that this message can somehow help somebody live a good life? So we've got to take down these radio stations. They are terrorists in our community. So, you know, I think that the music has to be dealt with. I think that hip hop is, I wouldn't be surprised if there was some COINTELPRO type stuff going on with that, because hip hop was seen as a national security threat because it was a very persuasive way to encourage black people to empower one another. You know, so Public Enemy is probably on a lot of FBI lists. They probably got taunted by the FBI. I haven't talked to Chuck D in years, but I would love to ask him that question. Because you saw that after Public Enemy was when you saw really the emergence of this gangster rap culture, which I'm all for the idea of black men expressing themselves in all of their humanity. So if you get a rapper, an Ice Cube to a T.I., saying some things that are politically incorrect, I'm okay with that because that falls under the reign of free artistic expression. But when you get to the point where you've got corporatized speech where you're just parakeeting the same message over and over again, that's when you are morphing yourself into the enemy.
And they lock the doors to rappers, like you probably are familiar with some of the more conscious rappers like Brother Jasiri X, Immortal Technique, and these are talented. And I've heard a lot of talented rappers that could really blow these mainstream media rappers, corporate rappers, away. And so there is that conspiracy because obviously these brothers should be played on the radio, but there must be something else going on.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, I put Immortal Technique on my Facebook wall today. I mean, there's no, why, how can this man have videos that have 14, 15 million views and not be able to get a record deal? I mean, are you serious?
Yeah.
You know, it's crazy. So yeah, there is definitely a conspiracy there, and it's one that needs to be exposed and taken down, period.
Now to end it up, the reason why you're here, the social justice part, you're talking about the incarceration of I would say young, I would say young black men, but now it's increasingly young black women as well. What is, I guess, some of the points that you're going to talk on this tomorrow?
Well, I think that we have to understand that the mass incarceration crisis is bigger than the civil rights movement for us. It is a modern day Holocaust. Our families have been destroyed. We have now cultural influences that would not exist had it not been for the war on drugs. We're at a point of, we're in a state of emergency. You know, we're in a point where a big chunk of our future is being defined right now by how we react to this crisis right now. We need all hands on deck. We cannot sit on the sidelines. We have to fight this. And even the conservatives are realizing what a huge mistake this was. This is destroying not just the black community, it's really destroying America because America incarcerates more of its citizens than any country in the world. But so even white folks should be on board with this. But really, black people, I think we have a special relationship with this problem, and we have to fight it in our own special way.
Now, do you think that because I absolutely agree with you, but now the corporations have privatized the prisons, so they're making hand over fist. A lot of people think that a lot of these jobs have gone to compete to robotics or to some foreign labor market, but not a lot of brothers and sisters really understand the privatized prison dynamic and concept. You know, that a lot of these jobs, if you want a job, there it is, you know, in prison.
Well, capitalism is a very bad thing when you don't regulate it properly. You know, it's a very greedy monster, and it doesn't care about people. And effectively, capitalism reminds itself that, and I say itself because it's a system that takes a life of its own, almost like artificial intelligence. That said, it reminds itself that that the best labor is free labor. You know, I mean, that's why slavery existed for so long. It wasn't because people enjoyed enslaving other people. It was because it was so profitable. And so now we do have slavery in America.
Mhm.
That's not an exaggeration, no ambiguity. The 13th Amendment clearly states that you can be a slave if you are convicted of a felony.
Right.
So that is the great loophole that allows them to enslave people, and it just so happens that many of them are African American men. I think that we are now in a society where for some of our young children, society has no place for them other than a prison.
Mhm.
That's what when they talk about growing up and becoming a productive member of society, in the mind of this system, being a productive member of society for that kid that grows up in the hood is for him to contribute by being a prison inmate and working for free. That's why they don't want him to be educated. They don't want him to be empowered. They want, they'll sprinkle his brain with all this music that encourages him to engage in criminal activity, put him in a world where he has no choice but to commit criminal activity just to survive. And then they haul him away in handcuffs, and he contributes to the system. That's how he becomes a productive member of society. That's where we are at right now.
And to end it, and I like what you said, that because all hands do need to be on board. I mean, I don't know how to stress that enough, that if more people get involved, and as the old saying goes, if everybody does a little, nobody has to do a lot. So yeah, I think that and I don't know what's going to be that turning point that sparks us if we're going to have to face what who was that? The dry bones in the valley. The four winds had to begin to blow on the dry bones before they finally came together and stood up. And so it looks like that might be the same case in our situation as Black people. Before you leave, if you can let the people know your contact information, websites, anything that you have planned in the future, please go right ahead.
Well, I want to say hi to the people. Hello to everybody who's watching. You can check us out at yourblackworld.net. If you want to email me, my email address is boyce@boycewatkins.com. And if you're interested in economic empowerment, we do have a great website called financialjuneteenth.com. It's Financial Juneteenth, because we believe in being economically free and breaking the chains of economic slavery.
All right. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Absolutely.
Right. And this is it. We're going to wrap this up. And we want to thank Dr. Boyce Watkins for giving us a few moments of his time. He'll be speaking tomorrow here in Dayton. We look forward to being there. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
God bless.